all of the like flashlight, GPS, all the small equipment that takes power, I've tried to consolidate so that they all take either double or triple A batteries. So I can swap power sources between them all. And then also, I've got a solar charger and a charger for double and triple A batteries. So I don't have to worry about, all these different sources, different sizes of batteries, and kind of fuss with keeping up, all kinds of things in my gear. It's double A, or sometimes triple A.
Double A works better than triple A, it lasts longer.
Yes. And so that's what I'm shooting for, and that's, this holds 4 double A's. So you get my rechargeables. And then, if I've got sun, I've got kind of a unified thing going on with it. The other thing I wanted to show you is, and this is just kind of a fun little thing. So, can openers. There's a lot of ways to get into cans, right? I mean, other than the fact that it's got a pop top on it. But without a hand canner or electric can opener, I mean, you can use the, and I've got one here somewhere, the little P38 military ones. Or barring that, it's, a knife all the way around the edge or whatever. But I want to show you one more thing. Now, I think this will work. You need concrete, and this concrete is kind of too smooth. But I think back here along the edge, I think this will work. So take your little can that you want to get into, and start rubbing it around in a circle. Now what you're going to see is nothing, but you're going to start seeing that the cement is actually starting to get wet. So like I said, this is a little bit smoother than I like it. So it might take a little bit longer. It's too smooth. Something a little bit more, just a little bit more aggressive. You'll essentially grind this edge off, and then the lid just pops right out. Because if we were to show you kind of a microscopic cross section of that, the can comes up like this, folds over, and the lid comes and folds over that, like that. And all you have to do is grind off that little edge right there. And then this just pops right out. But you'll be going around, and you'll see it'll start to get wet when you break that seal. And just do it a little bit more, and eventually you get to where you can see it's ground off all the way around. It just pops right out. A little bit of effort, but it's like I said, if you have 10, 20 ways to doing things, then you're never going to have to stop and worry or wonder about, what am I going to do
You
now?
ever had the top pop off before you get turned over?
No, it's in there pretty good. The tension right in there, it'll hold it on usually pretty good. So I want to kind of change gears a little bit, go to more of some theory, some principles, and if you go on your handout to next to the last-ish page, disaster preparedness worksheet. And the title of this is Planning Your Disaster. As time goes by, as our kids grew up, and we started doing more and more things. We started realizing, number one, we needed more medical stuff. One of the ways we learned that became really evident was my kids were old enough to learn how to run the tractor, they knew how to do chainsaws. And I have a PTO winch on the back of the tractor that we would pull logs in with and bring them up to the house and cut firewood. Well, it was the day that the kids finally learned how to do all that by themselves. So I could be sitting at home and let them bring the logs in, and I would dice them up, and then we'd put them in the woodshed. And they knew how to run all this stuff. So it's like, okay, I took them down into the woods, and I showed them, I want you to get this log with the PTO winch that's on the back of our tractor. So it's kind of an A-frame shaped thing with the cable coming out the top. You pull it out, you hook it on the log, and then you've got a pull rope clutch. So the harder you pull on that rope, the more it engages the clutch of the winch. And so you can just yard that log right in to the machine, hook the chain onto the winch itself, and then pick the winch up and take it back to the house. Well, Jeannie and I were just kind of blowing time, letting them do their thing. Man, it's like 15, 20 minutes, and they weren't back. It's like it should only taken them 10 minutes. So I thought, okay, they're kids, they're just goofing around down there. Well then, so we just said, well, let's walk down there and see. Well, we come around the house, and our oldest son, Jesse, he's running up the house. He's coming up the road. It's just kind of a frightened look on his face. And he was so out of breath, he couldn't tell us anything. But we knew by the look on his face that something had happened. And he was trying to reassure us, but all he could say was something like, how did he say that? It's Daniel. And it's okay. He's not under the tractor or anything like that. That's all he could say.
That's reassuring.
What has happened, it's like, oh man. So we're running down into the woods to where they were. My wife gets the truck in case we have to transport him, so she drives down there. Well, I get down there with my son, and on the way I'm trying to ask him, okay, what's going on? So I am ready for whatever it is that I'm going to see, right? So I want to be able to go into gear. And he's just so out of breath, he can't talk. So we come around the corner, and he's kneeling in the road, holding his leg. It's like, okay, he's upright, he's conscious. No emergency. But he is holding his leg, and there's blood coming out from between his fingers. It's like, okay, so what'd you do? Well, his brother, old Jesse, was the one that's like, okay, I'm going to pull the log in first. So he's yarding on the road. Well, the log hits an underground something, a stump, and it won't pull. Well, because you're pulling from a high point in the winch, it's a good thing because it digs the winch in deeper and it provides more of an anchor. Well, unless that log doesn't move, then it lifts the tractor up like this. And of course, they saw the tractor coming up. Jesse's like, Daniel, get in the bucket. And Jesse's thinking counterweight. Okay, so you've got a 2,400-pound tractor and a 97-pound kid. The 97-pound kid he had the physics right, but the weight was all off. So Daniel's standing in the bucket of the tractor, and he pulled the tractor, and it really went up like a bucking bronco. But when it came down, Daniel lost his grip, and he hit his head on the hood of the tractor and his chest on the top of the bucket. Well, his shins hit the sharp edge of the bucket. And it just like cut right through his jeans, just down to his shin bone. So he made a great big old huge cut in him. You know, it wasn't life-threatening, but it was, you know, something we had to deal with. But, you know, that there again, it's like the chainsaw thing, cutting stuff in my leg. Okay. There are things that I'm starting to see are reoccurring patterns of, you know, if you're using chainsaws, if you're using motorcycles, if you're using tractors, if you're using firearms, if you're using all these things, they all have inherent danger in them, right? So if you notice that is like part of your lifestyle, then it's really important that you incorporate some means of addressing that particular issue. Does that make sense? So that's kind of where we're going with this. So if you have your handout, that first question, what are your local hazards or threats? So I want you to start thinking about where you live specifically. Are there things in and around where you live that are problematic? And it could be anything. It could be the deep gulch that your driveways goes down through to get up to your house. You know, does that ever flood? Is it going to cut you off? Little things like that you know you might go past every day, but if you stop and think about it, it's like, you know, there is a hazard here, here, and here, and it could be any number of things. And I want, as we go on, maybe you'll kind of start seeing more and more of what we're talking about. Number 2, where will you meet if you have to leave your home? Now this kind of is predicated on home is in the middle of danger or disaster. It might be that a lot of times in disaster, home is the very, very best place to be because you have the most resources there. Does that make sense? I mean, yeah, this is some nice stuff to get me by, but just by definition, I have more stuff at home than I can throw in a vehicle. And I know what it is, and I know where it is, and even if my house has gone from this to smashed to flat, I still know where to pick through the rubble to find my tools and to use. So this idea of, quick, bug out, is not necessarily the first and foremost idea that you should jump to. It's like, no, if you at all possibly can, stay home, because you always have more at home than you can take with you out in the field. But sometimes wherever home is, that's the problem. It's, fire, wildfire, or whatever. So have a plan if you've got a family and you guys have to leave, or somebody's already in town doing whatever it is and you need to leave. Have a plan is, okay, so where are y'all gonna meet up? In the chaos of a county-wide disaster and everybody's going every which direction, do you have an idea or an area or place where you all have planned, if you can't find each other, where are you going to go and just be? And the other person's going to come to that same spot too. So a place you can meet up if you can't get back home. Another thing to think about, number 3 there, list the ways that you can communicate. So, you've got, most of us have cell phones we can communicate, but if power's down, or your cell phone's dead, it's like, do you have any sort of backup method of communicating with somebody else? Well, that's something to think about. It's like, okay, so, there are family service radios, there are CD radios, there's ham radios, if you know how to use that all, that you can communicate. But, that's something to think about. How do you get messages? Now, if you have a dedicated place that you can meet, yeah, you can find each other again. But it's a lot nicer to be able to find out, okay, so where are you exactly right now? Well, let's go to, meeting location XYZ, whatever it is. Question number 4 there. Where will you keep your go bag or your bug out bag? Like I said, it doesn't need to be a bag. It could be a tote, suitcase, whatever. But know where this stuff is all the time, and how to access it. Don't have it tucked away in the corner so much that you forget about it, and then you've got boxes of whatever stacked in front of it. Practice some of this stuff. Jeannie and I will do this. It's like, okay, where's your stuff? Go get it, put it in the car. And then boom, hit the timer. And see how long it takes us to go get the stuff, get it in the car. Okay, now we're ready. Is it 30 seconds? Or is it 20 minutes? Well, sometimes we don't have 20 minutes. We've seen in the last few years, the Paradise Fire. That fire was traveling at 80 miles an hour. You can't outrun that. And it just torched the town of Paradise before anybody, you hardly knew what was happening. So the ability to mobilize yourself very quickly and practice this, challenge each other. It's like, hey, go get your stuff and group, and then time them, and have them time you. And see just how long it takes. And so get that in your mindset of, I know where my stuff is, and I kind of know about how long it takes me to grab it and get it into the car, and have the car ready to go. And that doesn't take a lot of time to prep to do, but it's good. Number 5, if you made a map of your local area, and it's not necessarily make a map of your local area, but know where you live, how many ways are there out of your home? By foot and by road. Is it just one way in, one way out? Well, that's something you need to think about. If there's only one way in and one way out, you really better hope that the fire isn't at that spot.
That's what happened to Paradise.
Yes.
Yeah,
And so there was no way out. So, with a little bit of forethought, after work or on the weekend, and if you've lived in one spot for any length of time, you should have a pretty good idea as to the roads. But it wouldn't be dumb to drive some of the roads that maybe you've never been on before around your place. And get a really good idea as to where the roads are spatially around this hillside and up over that, and where they go and where they end up. So that if you need to bug out and you need to get away from your place to the east, let's just say, how many of you have an escape route to the east of wherever it is that you live? How about north? How about south? How about west? Because especially around here, forest fire can strike anywhere. And so, how many ways in, how many ways out do you have in your place? And again, not just vehicle, but on foot. Do you have that capacity to vacate your home and avoid hazards on foot? Have you actually driven those routes? Are there potential hazards on that route? So what I mean by that is, there's a road to the south of us. It's a good road. It goes to Longview, Kelso, from Castle Rock. But for, as long as I've been there, which is 50 years, there's a couple sections of the road where the road is always sinking. It's doing this. It's heading towards the river. The river's like 100 feet down and just out. Well, there's probably 5 feet of asphalt on that section of the road, because once it drops down about 6 inches, they'll come and they'll put another layer on it, bring it back up to, so it's a nice smooth road. But within a few months, you start seeing the little crack along the edge, the middle of the road. And so you've just got this kind of crescent shape, and it just keeps settling. Well, at some point in time,
It's gonna go.
it's going to go. We're going to have a lot of rain, a profuse amount of rain, and then maybe an earthquake that's going to shake it loose, and it's just going to be that little trigger, and it's all going to go down to the river. Well, if I'm getting out of Dodge, as it were, and that's my road, it's not going to be passable, you know. So, and I'm not going to be wanting to drive 55 miles an hour at the middle of the night over that road and just have it all of a sudden disappear out from under me. So start thinking about some of these hazards. Is the road quite low? Is the road at the same water level as the creek? And it might go over several small bridges. Is there going to be a potential flood that's going to cut off that road? Well, you want to kind of have noticed those type of things ahead of time, so that, you know, hey, if I come, and I've been at friends' houses to help them, and I had to oh, yeah, this road's all flooded. Okay, how many roads do I know? And then there were several ways I could have as a workaround to actually get to their place without driving through the water. You know, but if I had never really thought about it or made contingency plans by driving those back roads, I'd have never known how to get to their place. Call them up, sorry, can't get there, road's covered. And you don't want to be driving on a road that has water over it, because you don't know, especially if it's muddy water, has it been washed out? The road might look good because the water surface of the water looks normal. And it looks like the road's there, but you know, there's a 5-foot culvert washout, well then it's not there. Then you're going to be going downstream. So think about these hazards, you know, as you go about your daily life. Just take out maybe a little bit of time here and there. And, you know, what can you do to kind of get an idea? We live on a logging road. The logging road, the back end of the logging road is gated off. But if I need to get out, it's not going to be gated off. I'm taking equipment with me to ungate it, if you get what I mean. You know, and I'll worry about consequences later, but if it's my life, you know, I'm going to cut a gate. You know, and I don't think anybody would fault you for that. You know, or driving through a back pasture of a neighbor. You know, if it's an emergency, I think people would generally understand, unless it's, you know, grumpy old whoever. And, you know, then they're going to be grumpy anyway. So, you know, bring them a plate of cookies. But let's kind of back up a little bit, and I need your imagination. On the last page, the title of what I want to do in this last section is Planning Your Disaster. So get your imagination in gear here, and let's list out, as much as we can, an exhaustive list of potential disasters.
If the dam breaks.
Okay?
Bridge out.
Fire.
Or slabs.
Okay?
Bridge is out.
Okay.
Nuclear fallout.
They like the way I say that.
We do have shifting roads over in our area.
What?
We have one area in our, well, a couple areas over in our highway over there where the road would disappear.
Okay, so what would you call that?
Landslide.
Slide, mud, slide, same thing. Okay, what else?
Grid goes out.
Bridge?
No grid.
Oh, grid.
Power outage.
Power outage.
She said no cell service.
Especially when your relatives can't call you.
Communication during that being out is like probably almost as bad as power.
I grew up without it.
Especially if it's more. not
So
just
columns
visual.
out. Let's see. How about, you got water here, so how about flooding? That,
Civil War.
That's gonna happen when the dam breaks.
yeah.
I'm freezing.
Has the dam ever broke?
It's
Now
built
when
on
it's
an
on a fault,
earthquake fault.
Okay, but you have had flooding around here, right? So it's
For
not
the
gonna
dam.
take the dam breaking to have flooding in certain areas.
We've had the creeks flood.
Come up quite a
If you
bit.
get an ice jam in the creeks, it makes them flood.
Okay, how about,
Water contamination in the city, in town.
what's the most snow you've ever had here?
Depends on how far back you go.
Lifetime.
96, 97 was really bad. In Troy, it was over 14 feet.
That's bad. Can that induce a disaster, an area-wide disaster?
Yeah,
It can.
you can't get out.
Roofs collapsed.
If you have floods, that's when you're gonna have them.
Big one.
Okay, yeah.
When you rain on top of that much snow and then you have floods.
Avalanche, okay.
I don't know if we have any potential of volcanoes going off, but,
It's on my list, in my area.
oh yeah, definitely.
Not necessarily here because of, the Cascadia range versus the Rocky range. But,
Well,
Yellowstone.
Yellowstone's only 400 miles, and you push all that ash up that high, if you don't have enough jet stream to keep it going east, it's gonna cause havoc on the west side.
the year 536, I believe it's 536, there's a couple YouTube videos, fascinating. It's like for 2 years, there was no summer. Europe, it's like it got dark, and it was this winter, all summer long, all spring, summer, winter, for like 2 years, and people had no idea. Crops died, mass starvation, famine. It was crazy. Well, we can go back now in the geological record and find out the huge problem in Europe, but it came from
Indonesia.
Krakatoa. A volcano erupted, put enough ash into the atmosphere that it actually darkened the sun and changed the weather profoundly for several years. I mean, imagine that happening today.
Well,
It could happen today. I mean, a big volcano is all it takes.
Fires up there.
And the temperature of the earth could drop, by a lot of degrees.
They say that area over there in Yellowstone, if that ever went off, they claim that it could affect us too over here.
The Yellowstone supervolcano.
Would affect most of the US.
Okay, some of these,
Only-
tornadoes, we don't have any problem with that around here. Okay, landscape, we got that one.
So thunderstorms or hail.
What about transportation?
Let's see.
That was coming from.
No, hold on a minute. Electric,
It's
oh,
fires up
we already kind of have the power
Yeah.
outage. So,
forest
the
fires.
grid down sort of thing, what did I have written down? This is kind of a broad category. Civil. Infrastructure, civil infrastructure, this can be, power lines, gas lines. Toilet paper. No, I kind of, but wasn't that weird during COVID? I mean,
Yes.
what was the deal with the toilet paper? There was a panic, and the rumors spread, and there was more than enough supply, but everybody went out and hoarded it. And we had weeks and weeks where there was zero stuff on the shelf. Didn't that feel like a really odd time? And it only came back when people stopped hoarding. They felt safe enough to where, okay, we don't need to buy every piece we find. Okay,
About
so,
civil unrest.
okay, so yeah, let's keep going here. Civil unrest, AKA November 5th, or whatever date, no, 8th, or whatever it is. Okay.
4th.
Ice storms. We had ice storms that created a whole big problem.
Okay,
Oh,
yeah,
we-
I see, we,
When we have windstorms, we have trees that get knocked over all over the place.
Microburst.
yeah,
Yeah, we had a microburst instead of a tornado.
when,
Wouldn't transportation, if the trucks couldn't get through, we wouldn't have anything over here.
And we have a possibility of terrorism,
why?
because there's enough terrorists in the country to head this way.
You know,
Now we're becoming preppers.
y'all should come over where I live.
You don't have any of that?
I moved away from that area.
Yeah,
If you don't have any, go tell Abby you're, send them to you.
you're. Okay, we're not gonna get political. The mentality of people here is way different than over there, and you can have nicer here. Okay, anyway, back on track. Terrorism, okay, what else? Depending on where the wind comes. I already put in nuclear,
It's the second one listed.
so that's kind of the same thing, actually.
What about transportation?
What about,
Force.
If they are being, like, if trucking all of a sudden ceased, truckers couldn't get.
okay, so civil unrest, so maybe within that would be union or, strikes or, yeah, everybody just says, okay, forget it.
Something to do with the lack of fuel to be able to get somewhere.
Fuel issues, about,
Yeah, do you keep your gas tank at least half full in your vehicle?
Another one around here is railroad accidents.
we have fuel,
Yeah.
let's just say that.
Railroad disasters. We got the rivers around here.
Supply lines,
That's true.
I'll get your trucking and your railroad.
So, economic disaster is gonna induce this. And now the loaf of bread is $42, and gas is 57. You know, I don't know about you, but I don't have that kind of cash sitting around, so that wouldn't be a problem, and that would be a problem.
Or you won't be able to access a bank.
Bank failures.
Okay, now let's,
I don't see anything on there about, trees, like the frost. I mean, I know we talk weather, but, it was really hard to get peaches this year because of the frost and the freeze that they had for the, for food.
okay, what would you call that?
Crop failures.
Yeah. That's a big one. A couple of years ago, there was no hay crop. People were scrambling to get hay.
What about this one? Issue. So, personal economic. If for some reason your net worth or value or cash under the mattress or whatever it is went away, or, you know, if you've got investments, that just went to zero, would that be a disaster for you?
Yes.
Disasters aren't necessarily statewide or countywide or even area-wide. They can be personal and individual. What about,
Your income suddenly disappears.
what about if you had a stroke tomorrow? Would that be a personal disaster?
Yeah.
That's a big issue. So, okay, so we've got a bunch to work with here. So now let's just take a look at this. Let's change colors. Now, in all practicality, are there any of these, just given this location, you know, within 99% certainty, are there any that we can just cross out? Because it would be so bizarre.
Tsunami.
Volcano.
What did you say?
Okay, where are they?
Tsunami.
Down
In the middle.
there.
Yeah, probably not that. More than likely not that.
Tornado.
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 And they're pushing the bridge out, no, 3 down, the bridge out.
Oh,
I mean, there's bridges, but there's always ways, 3 or 4 ways around it.
That's a reality for us recently.
yeah.
In our area
So-
over there,
That kind of goes back to the page before. It's like, it's a real bummer, but get to know your area so that you do know those
Thing is,
spots.
if the main bridge here went out, like, you'd have to go up all the way around to Yakin down Detroit.
That'd be a
Yeah.
pain. Okay, so that could happen. This definitely could happen. That could happen. Actually, we've got this. You don't have any like military installation, missile silo, or anything like that around here, right?
Not directly.
So nobody's
Not that we know of.
necessarily going to be targeting this area,
It's more east.
but you still could have fallout depending on where your weather patterns come in. That would be pretty nasty.
well, our biggest thing here would be a grid knockout, like knocking out dams, because a lot of the grid comes from these valleys where all these hydraulic dams are. Hydraulic
So
dams.
landslides, that's kind of the same thing. Power outage, that could cause problems. Okay, crop failure. Snow, definitely a big one. Earthquake has potential. If snow's an issue, then definitely avalanche is an issue. Yeah, things could get crazy. I mean, just look at the world around us. It's half crazy already. It's halfway there. Wind, yeah, you have these weird freak storms that show up. Just crazies coming into the neighborhood that don't live here. You hear about that on the news? Pandemic. Is it you or just me that is scratching our head when all the people that are dealing with this are saying, oh, when the next one happens, well, what are they telling us? So,
Pandemic.
Did you hear about what happened over in the Middle East, where they had those walkie-talkies
Pagers.
that they had? That's a whole other dimension.
personal economic issues and personal health issues.
I'll tell you later.
So, how many of you have a garden? How many of you have ever tested the soil in your garden to know? How many of you have ever tested or done blood tests or to understand and have a pretty good idea as to what's happening in your own health, inside your own body? It's like sometimes we put more resources into identifying what our garden needs than what we need physically and, with regard to our health status. It's like, that's backwards. So, okay, with this in mind, let's keep going down. So we've got a big list. So let's start with that given, like just a little bit down, 2 inches down on our planning your disaster page. Given your circumstance in life, in other words, where you live, what you do for a living, your age, your health, your abilities, what kind of abilities do you have as far as assets? I mean, do you know how to rock climb? Do you know how to whatever? Your financial capacity and your ability to network with friends and family around you. Just that first line, given these circumstances, does it make some of these more or less likely to occur. And I'm thinking of ones like these, or this. Because these are dependent, particularly on your own specific situation. Does that make sense? So yeah, we are going to look at the county-wide, the community-wide issues because of where we're at, but we're also going to take into account how old are you? How's your health? How's your economic viability doing? Because at some point, yeah, this might happen. But if you've got plaque buildup in your arteries right now, and your lifestyle is conducive to plaque buildup, this could be like go to top of the list. You see what I'm saying? You've got to look at yourself in the mirror and get right up close and have a good talk with yourself. It's like, okay, how am I doing? Economically, are there things I can do to kind of create a safety net? Do I have an emergency fund? Or some sort of backup? I mean, if you're on fixed income, it's like, okay, life's sparse, but is there anything I can do to kind of buffer myself, even a little bit? One thing that, and I can't remember how I got started doing this, but I found a little piece of PVC pipe with a cap on the end of it, and I thought, you know what, actually, a quarter fits in that pipe just perfectly. I'm going to stick that pipe down behind my dresser, and every time I get quarters are going to go into it. Now, originally when I did this, it was going to be my mad money. I could put quarters in there, and I couldn't touch it. I couldn't even get it out and look at it, unless it was absolutely critical. And then it was for whatever I wanted it for. So, kind of, like I said, mad money for whatever. So I did that several times, and it's like, okay, so a piece of pipe about this long, it was about $120, $25. It's like, well, you can't do too much damage. I don't know. So then I thought, this took so long to save this. I don't want to just go out and spend it. So I put it in another little container, and I started over. And I did that a couple of times, and now it's starting to build up a little bit. Now it's like, I don't want to just go out and blow this. So it's like, I know. So what I did was I took it all into town to the bank, and I got it turned into dollar coins. And I put it back, and now it's like all those quarters in that tube only took up this amount of room in dollar coins. So what this became was a very microscopic form of savings, right? Well, the more I did it, the less likely I was to want to spend that money. So it's kind of become, in a way, a little emergency fund. And I just keep when I get a big pile of quarters, I turn it into dollar coins. So it takes smaller volume. So now it takes a lot longer to fill that tube of dollar coins. And that's a lot more than $120. But even these little things, like pick dimes, just save dimes. Just like cut a little hole in your wall and just start poking dimes into your bedroom wall. Well, I don't care, whatever. But you get what I'm saying? It's just poke them away when you can't see it. But it's building, because you're always doing. I mean, you always have to go to town. You always have to buy stuff, and you always get change, right? Well, squirrel some, pick dollar bills or whatever it is. Just squirrel those away. Whatever those are that you get, those automatically get put away where you can't see them. They're hidden until the container is so full you can't shove any more in there. And then you've got a little bit, a seed of a emergency fund. Does that make sense? So, I mean, there's lots of ways to go about this. Okay, let's go on. Let's add to this. Given your location, your home, your work, where you go to school. So these established routes that you travel often, are there hazards on those routes that you need to identify? And just maybe spend a little bit of time thinking about, do you drive over the bridge between home and work? Well, that would really impact your life if the bridge goes bad, right? Is your employer gonna understand, sorry, bridge is out, can't come to work for the next year and a half? Well, that would be a problem. But if you don't have to go over the bridge because your work and your home is, 5 blocks from each other, well, then this is not gonna be a problem. So you can kind of X this out, you see what I'm saying? For your own personal location, homework, school, whatever. And then point number 3, given stress, fear, trauma, shock, denial, and panic. What do I mean by that?
You fall apart.
How you doing? As far as is your state of being, do you have reoccurring depression? Do you have issues? Do you have, these things that can limit your capacity to keep that positive mental attitude that wants to resist difficulty and that will to live? You get what I'm saying? This is a big issue when it comes to disaster preparedness, search and rescue, and the whole issue of working with people and dealing with stress management. That is a big one. This is an issue for a few hours ago. I was talking about the people that work at the 911 call-out center. They have to, they should, they have to, if they've got a good boss, have established, planned debriefing sessions, because they spend all day hearing about, these crises, and they just pass it off, and they very rarely get the resolve of that crisis. So in the back of their mind, there's that child that was, pulled out of that burning house, and they never heard what happened. Well, that plays sometimes on our mind I don't know what it is, but now, after a few weeks of this, I'm just kind of anxious, I can't sit still. I don't know what's bugging me, but something's bugging me. You know what I'm saying? You got these things going on, so kind of going deeper in life are there things that trigger your stress levels, your panic levels, that will, could in a very difficult time induce shock? That's something to think about, because these issues become very debilitating in a disaster preparedness scenario. When things go bad and everything is taken out from under you and you don't have a house anymore, you don't have, you have a bank account, but where's my information? Where's my medical information? It was burned down with the house. Things can kind of stack up. Well, eventually over time you can replace documents, personal documents, but it takes time. And meanwhile, sometimes banks just don't want to hand out information. Well, it's like, I've been in this bank for 5 years. You know who I am. Yes, I know, but you need that, Things can get weird and complicated when power goes out, when just something bad happens, and it gets big. Let's keep going. So these things up here are all detriments. They're all problems that could be encountered in life. So let's counter this with a list of your own. It's like, okay, so what kind of assets do you have? And, for each one of us, that's a little bit different. And in our worksheets, you should take note of that. Do you have assets? Do you have an emergency fund? Do you have chainsaw? Do you know how to work a chainsaw? Do you know, or a winch on your vehicle? What are these what are these things? Do you have, you know, a reasonable amount of camping equipment, snow equipment? Do you have snowmobiles? Do you have, you know, whatever it is? Are there things at home that you could really consider as valuable assets? You need to really kind of go through that and make a list, or have a really good understanding as to what you have, and this can be skills as well. Do you know how to do, fill in the blank? Are there things that you can do that would be valuable when several of these things happen all at once and things are a mess? You know, do you know how to cook well? Do you know how to, give me some ideas.
I had a friend one time that we went to split wood. He didn't know how to use a splitting maul. It just knocked me to the floor. It's like, really?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds little, and we don't, you know, we don't point fingers at people like that, but there's some things, like I said, there's more and more young people that I know don't know how to work one of these, and it's like, oh, really? It's such a handy tool, but it's kind of outdated. Yeah, there's other things. There's propane. They make them for propane now. And, you know, is that good enough? Oh, yeah, maybe. But I want to know how to do a lot of things, you know, a lot of different ways. So I would count that as an asset. Do you know how to use an axe, a chainsaw, you know, one of those come-alongs, little hand winches. So list that out as well. Let's keep going. Because we are going somewhere with this.
Mitigating personal disasters.
So the back sheet, what I'd like you to do is spend a couple of minutes on this back sheet and just kind of look over this list and write down on your back sheet, where there's 10 lines there, right? Yep, 10 lines. So again, A, B, C, and D, your personal circumstances in life, which include, you can go back, your age, your health, your abilities, your financial capacity. So all this personal stuff, given that, given where you live, maybe there's some issues in and around where you live or what you do, and maybe some of the things that are a little bit less predictable on this list. Write out the top 10 that you think, for your given, again, age, the circumstance, your health, your finances, which is all on here. List out what you would think would be your top 10. Okay? And there's more handouts if anybody doesn't have one. Built-in cameras that have the capacity to recognize you using AR software, whether you're drowsy or intoxicated and the car won't start.
You just call backseat driver, yeah.
And now you think about that. That means it's like Alexa and everybody else that's always listening and watching. And you know, and nobody ever would use that kind of data for nefarious purposes, I'm sure. But the fact that data is being collected I mean, nobody cares about us. It's for, you know, it's for marketing purposes, for whatever.
Right.
And this kind of stuff, because we can do it, is being developed. Now, it's not functional necessarily right now, but very, very soon. So yeah, you know, the world is going crazy. But really kind of be serious with yourself and just pick out your top 3, circle those, and then the bottom part of this, And that's just for starters. And also, if you can, if there's a cost associated with that, try to, approximate that. So again, given your own personal situation, circumstance, health and capabilities, whatever, out of this list, or maybe there's some we haven't put on here, be reasonable.
What about money, value going down to nothing,
That would be inflation.
inflation?
A little bit unpredictable. So, these two are very much tied together. Some of us were raised in a situation where you tend to be a saver. Some of us tend to be spenders. And it just kind of like, where does the money go every month? Some of us have resources and capacities to generate more of an income stream. Some of us don't have that capacity. So, if that is a real issue that you struggle with, then by all means, write that one down as one of your top three. And now think about, okay, so what are some actionable steps that you could take to kind of maybe mitigate that? It could be, taking some classes on finance. It could be, do you know somebody who understands business marketing or money management that could help you get the most out of what limited funds you have available? Are you trying to live above your means? Can you downsize in a way that's really practical, given the fact that, we're all getting older? One of the things that I do is beekeeping. So I raise honeybees. I have honey. And I just got this weird thought the other day. All my friends that I went to school with, we're all at the age where we're starting to retire. And here I am with my honeybees just getting started. That's like, okay, so I've got about 90 some hives. Do I want to be doing this in 20 years? Yeah. But maybe not 90 hives. I mean, that's going to break my back. So, as you get older, you're going to have to start thinking, can I do what I'm doing in another 5 years? And be real with yourself. Because, at some point, it's like, we're going to have to start changing the way we live.
One of the things that's been, come to my mind very clearly this year has been, what does it cost to get old?
Exactly. When potential ability to generate in income diminishes a little bit each year, unless you develop some sort of passive income that keeps itself going.
Try going to an assisted living and see what it costs you a month.
So start with your top three and try to get as actionable as you can with these steps. What can you do for your own particular circumstance? And that's planning for disaster. What are you going to do? Yeah.
What do you recommend for a nuclear group, like mother, father, son, or, can you do this as a group, in other words? Or is
Sure. You can do it as a family, but also individually, because what if mom disappears off the scene? What if dad disappears? Do you still have the capacity to pay the bills? You know what I'm saying? If breadwinner goes away, and it happens every day, what happens if, are you driving a 20-year-old car and your finances are tight? Well, at some point, what's going to happen?
Car's gonna die.
The car's going to die. Are you going to be able to manage that? So
Well, that personal economic can be broken down to a lot of different categories.
many pieces.
Well, you lose the breadwinner, can you pay the mortgage
Right.
and the car payments?
So that's something to think about
Yeah.
as we all get older. is like how, better late than never, right? How is it that I'm going to kind of navigate going forward in life? Well, certainly, you know, depending on the Lord and prayer, take you a long ways. Bible says, you know, his children. Oh, how does it go? The Lord's children, something about not begging bread or going hungry. You know, so there is that network, the spiritual network, people hopefully that can kind of walk beside you and help out.
But on that same note, I think that it's helpful to also realize and to think ahead of what, if your family has different values, you can't work together as well either,
Yeah.
spiritually or,
Right.
you know.
So that's where doing this for yourself, if you are more isolated like that, you know, what can you do? Put your mind on the stretch. It's like there's always ways to do something. Where there's a will, there's a way. And you know, just don't lay down and give up. You know, that positive mental attitude should go a long ways. And you know, building a network of friends, maybe family or whoever, that can kind of have your back. By nature, I'm not a social person, like my wife is. You know, she has 1 million friends on Facebook. I don't have Facebook, so it's like I've got this many friends, but so you know, just working.
I think I'm gonna go.
You know, if left to myself, I would just like stay off in my little hole. But I need to think about that, and it's like, you know what, that's not good for me. I need to engage and be involved, and be a benefit to somebody else, rather than just living for, you know, my own little bubble. And that pays off, you know, because there's always somebody that might need my skill. And how they're going to know that unless, you know, I integrate and are friends with people that, you know, maybe it is that you can cook well. And there's a mom with a bunch of kids that needs help cooking. And, you know, we can step in and help them out. And then start bartering. You know, so I'll cook and you can provide whatever. So, in a nutshell, take this home if you don't want to do it right now. Take that home and work on that. So, any other questions? Yeah.
Could you summarize what kind of attitude that we should take as those people that want to survive a disaster? What kind of attitude or thoughts or position?
So, I think we talked a little bit about this at the very beginning. The things we need to survive: air, water, some degree of protection or shelter against the environment. But another really big one is positive mental attitude. And how did we write that? I wrote this down. The will to live, or at least the desire or capacity to challenge adversity. If you don't have that, and you're prone to just give up, well, you're probably not going to get very far. But if you can get some fire in your bones, and pick yourself up by your shirt collar or bootstraps, and start doing something, even baby steps, and just make an improvement in life, just a tiny improvement every day or every week. Sometimes, like my wife and I just said, okay, well, you know, we got too much junk around. We're gonna have to go through this stuff and get rid of a whole bunch of it. Well, we go through it and we get stuck halfway through. It's like, man, this is a good thing. And we just become paralyzed. Well, you know what? Just don't take it so serious. Just go through and pick one thing out that just doesn't belong and throw it away. And do that 10 times. And just take the one little least, what's the word I'm thinking of? The thing I need the least. Just, okay, jettison that. And it's like, I still got my stuff, you know. I still got my security with all my junk. But if you do that a bunch of times, and just like eliminate that one worst thing. There's always going to be that one worst thing.
Even though it's good.
Even though it might be good. It's too much. You do that a few times and you'll find that you've actually eliminated. And now you have downsides. And it's like, ooh, this what I have left is way more manageable. Yeah.
This hasn't been mentioned, but in my own soul, I want to mention it. As a Christian myself, this year, knowing that I have a hope has helped me through some really tough times. And when you get to the point where you've done everything you can to stand and it's still not enough, that's what it really boils down to.
Yeah, none of it, we're not taking anything with us, you know. And that does take us back to our verse that we brought up this morning. Well, in it as a starting point, Proverbs 22:3, the prudent man sees trouble coming afar off and hides himself. If you just step back and look at some of the stories in the Bible, man always had a part to play in what was going on around him, and God always had a part to play. It was Noah and his friends and associates with the hammers, you know, but it was God that closed the door and made it rain. You look so many stories. We have a part to play. The story of King Asa in the Old Testament. What was it said about King Asa? In a time of peace, he prepared for war. He fortified his cities. He made the shields. He did all these things while there was no apparent need for these things at all. But he set about preparing when there was no trouble, so that he would be ready to depend on God, not the stuff, when the time came. You always see that duality in almost every story in the Bible. Is, you know, yeah, you sharpen your sword and you know how to use it, but it's not the sword that gave you the victory, it's God that gave you the victory.
Well, there is going to be a disaster, and I think all of us are going to face it that catches us totally off guard.
Yeah. You just look at the way the world's going. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, you get down one in the dumps because things seem to be closing in. You pick up Proverbs 1:19 and read 5 verses. Just that will change your thinking.
A lot of promises there. So, what else? So, y'all gonna do this? Okay. And don't play games with yourself and bluff. Oh, things are gonna be fine. Maybe. But here we have an opportunity to, you know, just say, okay, so what? Yeah, wait a minute. Let's just back up and look at life. You know,
Is it getting better or is it getting worse?
or is it getting better or more difficult? You know, if it is getting a little bit more difficult, I want to keep my thinking out ahead of things, and you know, maybe just do what I can to see things coming afar off and hiding myself from it. So I'm ready.
And the same, an ostrich with his head in the sand is not going to protect him.
What?
An ostrich with his head in the sand is not going to protect him.
Yeah. So, any other questions? That's about what I have. So, anything like going back on come at this whole thing from a completely wilderness primitive side of things. How to do something with nothing. The fire making, you know, the wilderness survival doesn't invite and involve all this, all this stuff. It just involves sticks. Rub two sticks together, you know. Can you do that? You know, making bow drill, hand drill fire. Knowing how to put shelter together from just primitive materials. So, you know, that's, I'm trying to think, what are some of the, geez, I'm actually here. Trying to think of some of the other classes that we've done. These classes have been the most productive, I think. But, find out, is there anybody in this area that teaches the medical stuff? And maybe you could get, instead of going and finding them, you know, see if you can get somebody to come here and do a class that will give you the basic first aid CPR. Here. Talk to the county sheriff, you know, do they have any resources available here for disaster preparedness? Every county, especially counties like I think you would be in here, have their own set of plans for what they do. I mean, the county, the state has, you know, somewhere in the, you know, capital city will have volumes and volumes of protocol for statewide issues. So it's out there and it's produced, but just, you know, see what somebody else has.
I would suggest one resource here in this area, in this town. If all of you, if you don't know where the search and rescue barn is down by the river on the bridge, you know where you go over the bridge, right down there, they have a ton of resources. And I know that all the search and rescue, at least in Sanders County and in Lincoln County, have all been trained in disaster preparedness. They have to, that's a requirement to do what they do.
Find those people.
Another resource that just came to my mind, because I know teachers have to upgrade and do that when they're in emergency situations in their classrooms, where they have to do CPR and that kind of thing, just a simple first aid. Through the public school, you can find out when they may be having that, when they're teaching something like that they might have a resource where you can get it.
So, yeah, between the collective group here, you should be able to track down, you know, other resources in your area. Oh, there was something. You know what? I've got on my computer, actually I've got a flash drive. I will download that flash drive maybe onto one of your guys' computers. I've got it was produced by Loma Linda, and it's a 12-month disaster preparedness plan. Every month is a different subject and a different put it together type thing. And it's from Loma Linda University. I could leave some resources. So if y'all want to contact either Kathy or whoever, you know, and you've got a flash drive, you could copy that stuff out maybe. So that is a handy resource though.
I also know that ACS, or Adventist Community Services, has a whole plan for that.
Yep.
They're a very good resource. They have a lot of information. They actually do teach classes. I know over at Upper Columbia, they've been doing quite a few classes in regards to that. I was part of that for a while.
A lot of stuff out there. But then again, you know, just go home and start playing around.
That's in the fire.
That's in the fire.